Well, hello. My name is Robert Fite, and I'm the fire chief for the city of Grand Prairie. Grand Prairie is in the heart of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex in the big state of Texas, and I want to thank you for watching this segment. I want to tell you I am by far not a cancer expert, nor have I had personal experience with myself with cancer, but I am very passionate about this subject as I've seen too many of our brother and sister firefighters from the age of 35 through the age of 60 have had battled this disease, some successfully and some not successfully, while being an active firefighter. It makes me even more passionate to see a firefighter who spends 30 to 35 years serving their community, and they get into retirement and only get to enjoy that retirement for 2 years because this disease of cancer takes their life. As you're going to see from some of the statistics, this is an epidemic in our fire service. So this is why I'm doing this. I'm hoping this makes it out to all firefighters, not only in the state of Texas, but wherever the video lands, because this is for you. And if you're a new firefighter, you have the opportunity to reverse this ship. If you're a fire chief and you've received this link, I really hope you send it to your elected officials, your city administration, your human resource director, anybody making decisions for your budget and anybody making decisions for your health and wellness or insurance of a firefighter. They really need to be educated on this cancer in the fire service. And then finally, this was actually done at the Texas Fire Chiefs Executive Conference in February of 2018. I want you to know it was about an hour segment, but we're going to condense it into 20 minutes, and we're not going to talk today about some of the cancer testing, some of the presumptive laws, especially in Texas, but I'll give you two contacts at the end of this video that you can use if you have some of those issues in your department. So let's go ahead and get started. If you're like me and having 30 years of service or 40, some of you even have 50, or you've only been here 5 years, you know what we've been taught since the beginning of time is salty is a badge of honor. The dirtier your helmet, the meaner you are. The more heat you took on your helmet, that means you're a tough firefighter. If your gear's dirty, that means you were in a war and hopefully you won. But in the last 5 years, we now realize that dirty and all these salty things that we've all been brainwashed with are not cool. In fact, they're just an invitation to cancer. As firefighters and fire chiefs, we own this. And I want to say that again because I truly mean it. We own what's happened to ourselves. Our behavior is what got us in this position. We can blame furnishings, we can blame plastics, we can blame smoke. The list goes on and on. But the bottom line is we own this because we're only here today at this epidemic of cancer because of our own behavior. And that's when I'm hoping we can start this change. So if you'll see on the screen, you're seeing the current cancer statistics that are put out by many federal agencies. If you will notice that firefighters have a tendency of certain cancers that we get more than the general population in the United States. For example, testicular cancer, we are twice as likely to get testicular cancer. Prostate, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, brain, lung, we are susceptible to those cancers more than the average person in the United States of America. Right now, firefighters have a 9% chance greater of getting cancer than the average person. Now, while 9% doesn't sound like much, if you look up cancer statistics today, you're going to see that the average USA cancer rate is anywhere from 28 to 35%. So add 9% onto that, which we are in the 40% of firefighters. Sometime during our career, we're going to be battling this. To make it more hard to battle is 14% of us, 14% more of us will die from this disease. We get faster, more aggressive cancers than the average public, and this is all from the carcinogens that we're going to talk about. If you're a fire chief, hopefully you understand the presumptive laws in your state, because each state is different, and not all states have presumptive laws. For example, in Texas, they only acknowledge 3 cancers that are related to firefighting. which are non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, testicular, and prostate, and that's it. So that is why we as fire chiefs need to do a much better job of educating those who are making these decisions that there are many other cancers we're susceptible to, but right now, here in Texas, we're only dealing with 3. So why are firefighters so much more susceptible to cancer, that 9 and 14% that we talked about? Well, obviously we have a repeated exposure to multiple chemicals and multiple carcinogens. We also have a repeated unknown exposure. We don't know all the chemicals and carcinogens in every fire, but yet we're exposed to them. We also have the cocktail effect, which means carcinogen A enters our body, carcinogen B enters our body, and with the chemical composition inside our body, they turn into a whole nother substance with the introduction of oxygen and some of those other things. So we have the cocktail effect. We have long careers. How many careers spend 30 to 35 years, sometimes 40 years doing the same thing? Our job does not help us. Sleep disorders, sleep deprivation, our diet, exercise, and then just the stress. We are risk takers. It's what we're paid to do. We take risks. Our apparatus, while as efficient as the emissions have come in the past 10 years, the amount of diesel exhaust and benzene in that diesel exhaust that we're exposed to day after day does accumulate. Our stations are not the most friendly. I'm willing to bet you right now someone watching this could walk out to their bay and your bunker gear will be within 10 feet of the diesel exhaust of your apparatus. So your gear is getting all of that exhaust every day. I bet a lot of you have diesel capturing systems that aren't hooked up. So if you go back to that, our behavior is killing us. This is part of that behavior we need to change. So cancer exposure is really simple for us. It's in 3 different ways. The way that we've always been trained or taught in rookie school goes back to inhalation through our lungs. In the past 20 years, we've come a long way wearing our air packs or our SCBA on the fireground. We don't wear them all the time, which is a behavior we need to change, but we do wear them more than we used to. But we now know that ingestion and especially absorption is where the carcinogens are getting into our body. The ingestion is from just bad habits. When we go to rehab, you're covered in soot, you're covered in stuff, and what do? You take a bottle of water and you drink it. But the big one, and the big one that you really need to think about is absorption. So for every 5 degrees that your skin temperature heats up, not core temperature, just skin temperature, in that fire with bunker gear on, your body has a defense mechanism that's actually making this cancer thing worse. To shed or rid of the heat of the body, your skin opens up its pores greatly. And then we now increase our absorption by up to 400% more. 400% more of those carcinogens are now absorbing into our skin, and the studies now finally prove that is the main route that cancer is getting in our body. So there's 4 studies that I really briefly want to talk about. I'm not going to get into the detail, but I will refer to them as this session goes. The 4 studies are Daniels, LeMasters, Fite, and Keir. Now, Daniels and LeMasters has been around for over 10 years. And I'm going to pause when I say that. 10 years, we as firefighters and fire service has known about this cancer epidemic. But it's just till now, till the last 18 months, 24 months, is everybody talking about it, from the magazines to all the different conferences we have. There are now special cancer summits just on the fire service all over the nation. But we've known about this for 10 years. Fite talked about, Fite did 12 positional analysis of the fireground, from search to rescue to vent, and monitored the carcinogens to all the positions. And then Keir did a urinalysis of Ottawa firefighters and really was the direct link that we finally needed that shows the absorption through the skin, into the kidneys, into the urine of all the carcinogens. And I'm going to refer to these studies as we move forward. Also, as you can see on your screen, there's also another test that was done called the FAST, which is the fluorescent aerosol screening test. So they put a firefighter in full protective gear with every ounce of skin everything was covered. Air pack was being used. It was like you were coming out of rookie school perfectly dressed. They put the firefighter for 30 minutes just doing basic firefighting stuff, bending, stooping, kneeling. Then they took him out and they put the firefighter under a fluorescent light. And as you can see from the pictures, the neck, the jaw, the legs, and the hands are a huge point of entry of dermal absorption. Your gear is not airtight. It is heat resistant. So the smoke, just like the aerosol dye, gets up in our pant leg, down our coat, in our sleeves, and that is how we're absorbing the carcinogens during fires. So what do we do about it? Well, I mentioned to you earlier about our behavior. It's just time to change. It is time that we change our behavior. What I'm going to show you are things that NFPA just came out with this year that they're recommending changes to NFPA 1500. And as you well know, that's our guiding light to health and safety in the fire service. Or what I'm referring to as a best practice that another department is already doing. Or I may refer to a model such as the European model in Sweden, because they tend to be light years ahead of us when it comes to health and wellness. So these are the things that we can do differently as firefighters, as fire chiefs, as the fire service. Let's talk about the fire ground. First and foremost, full PPE, personal protective equipment, all the time, no matter what. Well, if you're a RIC team, you need to be on air, waiting to go in with your hood on, all gear on, gloves included. This is a change. We know that in the fire service, unless you're inside, typically we're not wearing full protective equipment. But as the Fite study showed us, even people on the outside had high levels of carcinogens through their urinalysis because they weren't wearing their gear on the outside. This includes command and pumping. Does that mean you're going to be wearing full PPE while commanding? Probably not. But as long as you're aware that you're being exposed to the diesel exhaust as well as the fire, maybe you may make some changes on where you locate yourself. Fire hoods. Hopefully you have 2 hoods by now. If you don't, get 2 hoods. Because when you come out of that fire, that first hood needs to come off and go in a bag. Do not put it back on. That hood has absorbed a tremendous amount of carcinogens, and it needs to go in a bag and get a new hood. Same with gloves. We know that your point of entry on your hands is a huge spot of absorption. We know everything you do with your hands, your glove is absorbing all of that soot and contaminant. Gloves are cheap. Just get multiple sets. When they're dirty, put them in a bag. Don't put them back on. But that's a change of our behavior that we've really never done. Consider rotating crews. One thing the study out of Chicago, San Francisco, and Philadelphia taught us with NIOSH was prolonged exposure on the fire ground is bad. Fite also showed us that double exposure, in other words, back-to-back fires, you don't have a double increase of carcinogens, you have a 3.5 increase. So the longer you're on the fire ground, the worse it is for absorption. The rule of thumb is right now, the first in crew, try to get them off the fire ground as soon as possible, because they have a 3 to 4 hour window before their kidneys start processing the carcinogens through their body, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. Don't forget about your arson investigators. Typically they wear coveralls and just a HEPA mask. They need to be fully bunked out. Treat hose, PPE, and your tools as they are blood. Many of you that have been around a while remember back in the 80s when we had the thing called HIV or AIDS come out. And we wore gloves and we treated blood like it was infectious. We need to start treating our gear and our tools like it's infectious. If it's been exposed to smoke, don't touch it with your bare hands. Yes, I realize as a fire chief that sounds ridiculous, but it is contaminated, and it is contaminated with cancer. And all we do is we touch it, we grab it, we wear it, we put it in our apparatus, we take it back to the station, and yeah, we'll clean it eventually. But remember that behavior I talked about? That is a behavior we must change. All apparatus not used needs to be turned off. I made myself a quote here and I want to read it. Why do we keep doing this when we don't have to? Why do we leave the apparatus on? And let's take a basic fireground house fire. 3 fire engines, maybe 1 or 2 fire trucks, 1 or 2 chief cars, probably an ambulance or 2. You may have a safety officer. You may have an air truck. You probably have 2 or 3 chiefs that coming from admin. Police cars, maybe 3. If it's a slow night, you may have 5. And what do we all do? We leave our apparatus running. And the command and the pumping apparatus operator in particular take a tremendous beating of benzene and diesel exhaust. So real simply, if it's not being used, how hard is it to turn your apparatus off? But again, as fire service, we haven't ever done that. So that's a behavior we got to change. And then also consider always being upwind, especially for command, but I know that's difficult with terrain and the streets and the way they are. So how about after the fire? As you can see in the picture, many fire departments are now purchasing an aftermarket, some type of gross decontamination system. There's multiple out there. But when your firefighters come out of that fire, the very first thing they should do is go to some type of massive gross decontamination water. Soapy water is best. Fite, in the study in Fite, showed us that soapy water can eliminate almost all the gross contamination on our coats. Fite also told us that our coats continue to off-gas even while we're not wearing them, which is another reason why we're going to talk about 2 sets of gear. Your gear has got to come off and be put in a bag before you go back to the station. Use a post-fire wipe. There are multiple post-fire wipes on the market. I want to say be cautious with those that have aloe. Aloe, while it keeps your skin soft, it also opens up your pores, which can exacerbate the problem. We're not here to have soft skin. We're here to get the contaminants off of us. So just be cautious with whatever wipe you use. Locally, we use the bigger wipe that has a surfactant, but the decision is yours, and I'm not here to advocate for one wipe. But just make sure you're using some type of post-fire wipe. Bag your hoods, bag your your gloves. All hoods and gloves need to go in a bag. Every firefighter gets a new one. Wash your hands and face before you go to rehab. If the fire is out and you're done, all your gear goes in a bag. Nothing goes back in the apparatus cab with you. It all goes in a bag separate from your transport. The goal is to have your cab a sterile environment. That is so unheard of in the fire service. But remember that behavior I've already mentioned multiple times. That's a behavior we have to change. And also bag your SCBA. How many of you out there will just rinse the SCBA off and put them right back in the seat? Well, they continue to off-gas. Tomorrow, the next firefighter leans up against it. You may have a kid do a tour. That kid's leaning up against it. Those SCBA really need to go through a decontamination process as well. So when returning to the station, remember you have a 3 to 4 hour window of the second you're exposed to the carcinogen until the time your kidneys start processing it. So the first in apparatus, the first in hose crew should get a shower or even a fire service sauna, which as you well know, in the fire service, we're now looking at saunas for post-fire. That needs to be done as soon as possible. And I'm going to challenge you as a chief to let your people be out of service. Mrs. Smith, when she needs help, is going to get help. It just may not be from that crew. That crew that went into that fire needs a shower or to get in a sauna as soon as they can. Clothes need to be washed. Don't forget about your shoes. Your first in gear goes in the extractor, which means you need 2 sets of gear. And I understand that is extremely costly. But this is why you send this to your elected officials so they can understand we need 2 sets of fire gear. Load new hose. I'm about to show you what Sweden does. Sweden does not load old hose on the fire ground. They bag it. The hose is a huge contamination that we continue just to do because that's what we've always done. So I want you to roll up your wet hose and then put new hose at the station. All your tools should be sent through a process. Your SCBA should be decontaminated. And if you have the luxury to send it to an ultrasonic cleaning unit, and then everything should be done with latex gloves and masks. I want to show you what Sweden's doing. They are well ahead of the curve. And as fire chief, even now I look at this and go, man, I just don't know how we can do this. Well, I'm telling you, we need to do this. Sweden's been doing this for a while. And as you can see from the pictures, they change clothes on scene. Everything goes in a bag. It goes in almost a hazmat bag. Their hose, their tools, everything gets bagged up. They touch nothing with their bare hands. It goes back to the station and they ultrasonic it, they clean it, and then they put new hose or new SCBA or whatever the process is on the apparatus. This is totally foreign to the way most of us do this. But again, Sweden may have the luxury of not having as many fires. They may have more funding, but there is no reason why this cannot be the model. I'd encourage all of you to Google the Sweden model and just type in Sweden healthy firefighters. And that document's going to come up and it's going to show you all the statistics and everything that Sweden's done. And finally, how about our stations or apparatus? I've already talked about the SCBA. If you don't have an ultrasonic unit, then maybe consider putting the SCBA in the compartment. Is that really that big a deal to get them out of the cab? Make sure your cabs had sealed floors. Why do we keep buying SCBA seats or fire seats that are cloth? Maybe go to a leather or some type of pleather, but the cloth seats just absorb all the contaminants that we are bringing back into that cab. If you can afford it, try to do an internal diesel capturing system or Plima vent. I know they're not pretty, but they really need to capture the diesel while it's sitting in the fire station. Your PPE room should be a negative pressure. Some have been positive pressure, but either way, your PPE should be out of the bay and into its own room. Airlocks for all fire stations. Should be an airlock between the bay and the point of entry into your station. Ice machines should be out of the bay. Now, here in Grand Prairie, almost every ice machine we have is in our bay. I would challenge you as a firefighter or chief, just go outside your ice machine, take a clear cup, put ice in it, and let it melt. Take a look at what you're drinking. So that's diesel exhaust and environmental dust and environmental pollution that is in those ice machines. Why we have done that? Well, it's just the way we've always done it, right? Well, now we need to change that behavior. As simple as an ice machine can make a difference. And then finally, I want you to treat your gear like it has a communicable disease. Do not touch it with your bare hands. Wear a mask when appropriate. If it's clean, it's clean. But if it's been exposed to any product of combustion at a fire, car fire, dumpster fire, house fire, treat it like it's contaminated. And then finally, I want to give you 2 points of contact. As you can see on the screen, Captain Robert Webb with the Fort Worth Fire Department. If you're a Texas chief or a Texas firefighter and you need workers' comp assistance on paperwork or how the process works, please contact Captain Robert Webb. I met with him a few weeks ago, one of the greatest individuals I've ever met. And he fought this battle in 2014. And he won through the workers' comp system. And he has up to 16 packets of every cancer we are susceptible to help you get through the workers' comp process. And again, this is Texas only. My contact is also there. If you need data, if you need help, if you need me to come talk to your department, whatever you need, no matter where you are, that is my contact. Again, I'm not proclaiming to be a cancer expert. I'm just passionate that we as a fire service change our behavior. And if you're a brand new firefighter, you've got 30 years to make a difference. Thank you.